Folks, you guys know I tend to try to stay out of fighting game community drama. Whenever there's some kind of discourse happening on Twitter, I'm usually just in the background, you know, posting funny clips and memes and not worrying about any of that. But this week, I was the discourse a little bit. It all started with this clip from the Sajam Slam. This was Brian F. teaching the top Overwatch player SK how to perfect parry, and SK did a pretty impressive job of perfect parrying on the first try, and she even got like 6 in a row here. Hold on, 1, 2,
look how close you are now. So, I mean,
3, 4, 5. Oh my god, 6. Yeah, so SK did a really impressive job of hitting that 2-frame perfect parry window, despite not really having played Street Fighter 6 for very long. Brian's pretty shocked too. He's saying this is not normal. It's not normal that a new player can hit this many perfect parries. So, you know, I spun up a little bit of a take on this. I said, reminder that the notion that fighting games are uniquely difficult in a way that other genres don't compare to is BS. You know, so a lot of people, they have this conception that fighting games are just too hard. You know, I can play League, or I can play shooters, or I can play Fortnite or whatever, but fighting games are just on this other level and they're too difficult for me and I'm not going to bother learning. And I don't really like this idea. I disagree with that. I think that if you're able to get good at other games, you can certainly get good at fighting games, no problem. There's nothing special about fighting games that makes them harder than every other genre. And let's just say, a lot of people disagreed with me. I have been getting replies to this in my inbox for the last few days, and it just keeps going. You know, there was a lot of pushback to this. A lot of people agreed with me, but a lot of people disagreed as well. So I wanted to go through some of the responses to this and discuss: are fighting games actually just that hard? Are they actually the hardest genre? Or are people maybe building it up a little bit too much in their mind, and they're actually not that bad? Let's talk about it. And by the way, I want to point out that Sajam already made like the perfect archetypical video about this topic 4 years ago. Fighting games are not inherently harder to learn than other competitive games. I don't agree with everything he says in this video, but I do agree with the general concept. I do think that this is true, that fighting games are not harder to learn than other competitive games. I strongly feel that way. So let's talk about why. So first up, I want to clear up exactly what I mean by unique. A lot of people pointed out, yes, obviously fighting games do have unique difficulties to them, in the same way that brain surgery and rocket science are both very difficult, but they're difficult in unique ways. Yes, this is true of video games as well. You know, fighting games, we have one-frame links and super inputs and stuff that are unique to fighting games, just like in RTS games, you know, they have build orders. You don't have to learn that for fighting games. For like Counter-Strike, you have to learn like grenade angles and stuff. I don't know, I don't play Counter-Strike, but every game has things that are unique to them. That's not really what I meant by uniquely difficult. I meant like difficult in an extra way that is uniquely more difficult than every other genre of competitive games, because it seems a lot of people think that fighting games are on this extra high pillar and here's every other genre of competitive game. I definitely don't think that's true. And another thing a lot of people said is, you know, this isn't a good argument because SK is a freak of nature. SK is a god gamer. 99.99% of us aren't going to be able to hit 6 perfect parries in a row. Yes, obviously that's true as well. SK is a very gifted gamer. I don't think the average gamer will be able to go in and be as successful in SF6 as she is as quickly. But what I was trying to say is that the ability to get good in one genre of game definitely carries over to the ability to get good in other genres. I think if you're like a normal human and you get to gold in League of Legends or whatever, that's where you can get to in League of Legends rank. You can certainly get to gold in Street Fighter 6. Absolutely no doubt in my mind that you can get to gold in both. Actually, you could probably get to platinum, because in League, gold is like the top 37-ish%, at least from the data I was able to find. And in Street Fighter, platinum is the top, what is this? The top 41%. If you're in platinum, you're in the top 41% of players. So I think that you could probably get to platinum in Street Fighter 6 if you are able to apply yourself and get to gold in League. I don't think that Street Fighter 6 is harder. I think they both will have a unique and different path, and they're both difficult to get good at. I don't think that fighting games are more difficult in like a special way. Another take that came up a lot was that fighting games are more difficult because they are unintuitive. Fighting games are more unintuitive than other genres, and they don't play to natural human tendencies. And I really don't agree with this. I actually think fighting games are one of the most intuitive genres. I mean, you press forward to move forward, you press back to move back. You press a button to attack and you just get the opponent's health bar to 0. Like, is that really less intuitive than, you know, a MOBA where you have to click where you want your character to go? You're not even really fighting an opponent. You have to destroy their base structures, but also you have to kill the creeps, but also you have to get the last hit on the creep if you want to get the gold or it doesn't count. You know, like, there's so much more unintuitive stuff in a lot of other genres versus fighting games where, you know, press button, make attack happen. Like, you can go into fighting games and just press the 3 button with Eddie Gordo, and you can beat people online until you get to a higher level. You will literally get wins just by, you know, pressing buttons and attacking the opponent. And yeah, another thing people say a lot is that in fighting games, you can't just learn by playing. You can't just learn by jumping in and playing fighting games. You have to go into training mode, you have to look up guides, etc., which I really don't agree with this either. Like, if you just think about it, like, what do you think people did before YouTube, you know? Like, how did people learn fighting games before YouTube, back when none of these games had tutorials? Like, back in 2000, you know, like Soul Calibur and Marvel 2 and stuff were extremely popular games. Some of the most popular games on the market were fighting games. And there was no real way to learn them. People just pressed buttons and they had fun and they didn't care about, oh, I'm not doing the optimal B&B that I saw my favorite streamer do. Like, no, you can absolutely just play the game and have fun and you don't need to go into training mode first. I really do believe that. I mean, if you guys want to talk about unintuitive, let's talk about one of the other games that I have some amount of competitive experience in. A lot of you guys probably don't know this. Teamfight Tactics. Okay, now this game is unintuitive. First of all, there's no tutorial. You just play the game. I've heard there's a tutorial on the mobile version, but I've never played the mobile version. No one I know plays on mobile. They all play on PC. So there's no tutorial. You just jump in. You're like, what am I supposed to do here? I guess I'll stand on this thing. I don't know. You get into the actual game and, you know, you can place your units and you can buy stuff. But it's like, how are you supposed to know, like, what units to buy? Like, what units go together? The mechanics of the game? Like, what do these things mean? You got this whole team planner thing that the game doesn't explain, but you can, you know, put stuff in here and see. Like, there's really no good way to learn this game just by playing. I mean, obviously you can. But if we compare it to fighting games, I think fighting games are much easier to learn by playing than something like this, where it kind of feels like, you know, looking up guides and like builds and stuff is almost mandatory. And oh, don't even get me started on items. Like, okay, what item do I build on what character? I have no clue. Edge of Night? Is this good on Elise? I don't know, guys. So yeah, this is what I call unintuitive. And yet, at its peak, this game had 33 million active players. And in my opinion, this game is about 1 million times harder to understand as a beginner than a fighting game is. Like, what is all this on screen? What does any of this mean? Of course, I know because I've played the game, but if you haven't played the game for a long time, I feel like this is pretty much impossible to comprehend. So, you know, we had TFT, 33 million active players at its peak versus, you know, let's look at Street Fighter 4. How many active players did this have at its peak? A lot less than 33 million. I don't know. Way, way less. So if we accept my premise here that, you know, fighting games aren't particularly unintuitive, in my opinion, it's way more intuitive to, you know, be able to walk forward and backward and press a button that makes my character attack. That's way more intuitive than whatever we were just looking at in TFT with all the million things on screen. And again, no tutorial to explain to you what anything means. If we accept that fighting games are actually not really less intuitive than some other genres that are more popular, why are fighting games less popular? What is the explanation? You know, at one point, fighting games were the most dominant genre in gaming, and now they're definitely not. So why is that, if it's not because they're unintuitive or difficult to play? So first of all, I would say fighting games are inaccessible. And I don't mean inaccessible in the sense of like, oh, it's hard to do special move motions, you know, in the sense of like making the game easier to play. I mean inaccessible in that it's literally, there are a lot of hurdles to actually playing the game. You know, first of all, fighting games are full price games, almost exclusively. These are $60 games. Plus, you know, usually more than that because, you know, they'll have like a season pass or whatever. So just getting in the door and convincing your friends to try the game, there are a lot more barriers than free-to-play games. And then once you actually get into the game, you know, fighting games require a very good internet connection. If we compare this to some other 1v1 games, like, let's say, you know, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic the Gathering, chess, TFT as well, you know, those games don't really require the snap reflexes of a game like a fighting game. And, you know, for many, many years, fighting games had bad online, right? Like, when do we think new fighting games started consistently having good netcode? It was probably with the release of Guilty Gear Strive in, what was that, 2021? So maybe like 3 years now, every new fighting game has basically come out with new good netcode, with rollback netcode for the most part. But before then, you know, in the Street Fighter 4 days, we were playing with some trash online. And of course, these older games didn't really have any tutorials or anything either, you know, like Marvel vs. Capcom. No tutorial. It has combo missions, but you're not going to know how to do these without a tutorial. And, you know, Street Fighter 4, no tutorial. Tekken 7, no tutorial. And these games all had really bad online as well. And not only, you know, is this online issue, it means that the game's going to be harder to play, but it also means that it's going to be a lot harder to find people with a, you know, close skill level to you, right? Like, if the only people who you're able to have good connections with are, like, you know, crazy hardcore grinders who've been playing the game, you know, for years or whatever, you're not going to have a good beginner experience. But let's compare this to another game that has a reputation for being very difficult. But unlike fighting games, I would say this is maybe the most accessible competitive game on the planet, and that's chess, right? I think we can all agree that chess is pretty difficult. This game has been optimized for centuries, and people are really good at it now, but this game is very, very accessible. You can play it in your browser, you can play it for free on your phone, you can even play it on a sheet of paper with a friend. You don't have to actually spend money. And because this game is so accessible, no matter how bad you are, you will be able to find other bad people to play against, you know? Even if you're like 300 elo, you're gonna find someone equally bad as you. You're gonna find some child who, you know, barely knows what the horsey does if you play this game online. So, like, yeah, I feel like that makes a huge difference. And even though this game is obviously very difficult, it feels much easier to get into than fighting games, in my opinion, because you will always be able to find other noobs. And obviously, there's so many other things in here, like there's puzzles and there's, you know, good ways to learn the game as well. The game is extremely accessible if you compare it to fighting games. And obviously, it being free makes a huge difference as well in terms of just being able to pick up the game and try it without having to commit to a $60 product. Okay, so besides the accessibility thing, why else are fighting games unpopular? And I think another thing is just the shifting landscape of gaming in general. Like I said, fighting games were at one point the most popular genre in gaming. And, you know, now they're definitely not. How far do we have to scroll down here on the Twitch homepage before we find a fighting game? Where is, like, yo, Street Fighter? Are you in here somewhere? Wait, no way. Did I miss it? Oh, no, I didn't miss it. It's just down here with 3.9K viewers. So, yeah, Street Fighter way down here. But if we go to the top, you know, the most popular games in the world right now, they all have certain things in common. League of Legends, Fortnite. Grand Theft Auto is kind of an exception. Is Grand Theft Auto free to play now? I don't even know. But League, Fortnite, Valorant, Counter-Strike, Deadlock, Dota, Apex, TFT. The thing these games all have in common is these are forever games. This is kind of where the gaming landscape has moved. For better or for worse, you definitely don't have to think that this is a good thing. I think in a lot of ways, it's not a good thing. But in certain ways, it is. These games are very accessible, and there are games where usually for $0, this can be like the game that you play. You know, they get frequent updates to entice you to keep coming back. They're constantly drip feeding you new stuff. It's like, oh, like if I just play one more game, I'll get this new cosmetic and then I can get some more in-game currency to buy this or that. They use a lot of tactics like FOMO, fear of missing out, where it's like, oh, the season ends in 2 days, so I gotta play this many games so I can get enough currency to buy this thing that's gonna go away forever if I don't get it now. And again, I'm not endorsing this or saying that it's good for gaming. I think in certain ways it definitely is manipulative, but these are the tactics that a lot of modern games are using to propel themselves to the heights of League of Legends or Fortnite or stuff like that. And, you know, fighting games are trying. You know, we have the Battle Pass now in Street Fighter 6, so, you know, they're trying to tap into this a little bit, but they are very, very late to the party. And let's just say that the stuff that you get is not really that enticing for most players. I think it's like decorations for your avatar and World Tour, which, like, You know, not that many people are, or in the Battle Hub, like not that many people are really caring about their Battle Hub character the way they do about, like, let's say skins in League of Legends that you actually see in the matches that you're playing. And if we talk about, you know, like a steady drip feed of content to keep you coming back, fighting games are definitely really slow when you compare them to other genres. You know, in Street Fighter 6, we're getting like 5 characters a year, which, like, don't get me wrong, I'm happy to see the new characters. I get hype every time a DLC character comes out. But if we compare this to, you know, other genres, the frequency of updates and how often things get shaken up to convince players to come back, it's very, very slow in fighting games. Even though they are trying to move in this direction, they are definitely not forever games in the way that something like League, Fortnite, etc. are. They have not really reached those heights yet. 2XKO maybe will be the closest, but yeah, we definitely aren't there yet. Okay, so one more reason, you know, if fighting games aren't too difficult, then why are they unpopular? I would maybe reply, are they actually unpopular? You know, yes, if we compare them to the biggest games on the planet, there's no fighting game up here amongst these really insanely popular games. But I would say that recently, fighting games are doing quite well for themselves. You know, I mentioned that since Guilty Gear Strive, I think that's around the time that every new fighting game has pretty much had good online and had a lot better modes outside of online that previous games didn't have. And I think we're seeing that reflected a bit in terms of how well fighting games are doing. I mean, Street Fighter 6 sold 4 million units in, what's it been, like a year and a half, a year and change? We compare this to Street Fighter 5, it took 4 years to sell 4 million units, so I would say Street Fighter 6 is doing very, very well. Tekken 8 as well, 2 million copies in the first month, which, you know, I don't know how long it took Tekken 7 to sell 2 million, but they say it greatly outpaces its predecessor, so yeah, Tekken 8 is doing really, really well. And of course, Guilty Gear Strive, 3 million units sold. We don't have exact numbers on how well previous Guilty Gear games sold, but there are some online estimates that Guilty Gear Xrd sold 100,000 units. 30 times more units for Strive is pretty insane. So I would say that fighting games are doing very well right now if you compare them to past performance. And I think if they keep improving the way they have, you know, we've gone all of a sudden from every fighting game having bad online to every fighting game having rollback online. Basically, most fighting games that come out have rollback. We've gone from no tutorials to it being the expectation that every fighting game is going to have a tutorial. We've gone from just arcade mode, like you play multiplayer and you play arcade mode, that's all there is. But now we've got multiplayer, arcade, world tour. We've got a million different modes to play with that make the games more fun. And now we're getting in all these forever game elements that are very rough right now, but they're only going to get better with time. So I think fighting games are improving a lot, and we're seeing the results in how well they're selling. So I think fighting games have the opportunity to do even better in the future and become even more popular. Will fighting games ever reach the level of, you know, gaming dominance that they did around the time of Street Fighter 2, or maybe around the time of Marvel vs. Capcom, Soul Calibur, these fighting games that were real industry leaders and pushing gaming forward as a whole? Will we ever reach that again? Probably not, just being realistic. Times have changed and now new genres have sort of taken over. But I do think that it's possible that fighting games could become even bigger than they are now and become extremely successful. And I don't think difficulty is the thing holding them back. But that's about all I have to say for the video, guys. If you guys disagree with me, and I know there's going to be a lot of you who do, feel free to yell at me down in the comments, but I, for one, am going to keep having fun and enjoying fighting games and introducing them to my friends and enjoying them with them as well. So that's going to be about it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.